The
Yay.
topic that I sent you was high vibe retreats through communal meals.
Yes. Yes.
And that came about because on most of your website, even the photos, like you've got the long table and there's this focus on eating in community. So can you tell me how you arrived in that place?
Oh my goodness. Like many things, it was a long and winding path. But the short version is that I've been a cook for many, many years and almost 3 decades. And I have often worked in the back of the house or in the basement of a hotel. And I never really got to connect with the people that I was serving food to. And to me, it's really important. I growing up, Thanksgiving was always one of my favorite holidays because it was about gathering friends and family around a table and eating good food and not having to worry about gifts. So I think it was just kind of a natural progression of bringing people to a communal table in a way that felt aligned with me and how I like to feed people. To me,
Mhm.
food is a love language. It's a way to say, I care about you, even if I've never met you before. And ultimately, my goal is that people come away from a table, they're passing platters, they're clinking glasses, and maybe they sat down next to a stranger, but hopefully they leave with a friend.
Yeah. That's I love that you say that, sat down next to a stranger, because I guess as the retreat goes on, people get more comfortable with each other. But initially, you know, when you see a long table, you try to do every other seat. So you're not
Right.
sitting next to somebody, because it's a little bit
Right.
scary sitting so close to somebody.
Indeed, indeed. And I have to say, working in many of the retreat centers and retreat locations that I have, I often am seeking out with the host a long table. It's important to me that everyone can be seated together, not in, some people at the bar and some people at the, you know, dining nook and some people at the dining table. And you're right. When everyone's forced to sit at one table, there's kind of this like little dance of should I sit here? Should I see who else is sitting here? And the first night, it's definitely always a little bit awkward, but I like to think that food is the greatest catalyst for connection. Like you can sit down and know nothing about the people next to you except that they have joined you in a retreat. So you have some kind of something in common. You both signed up for this. You can start a conversation by saying, can you pass that platter? And things just can continue from there. And by the end of a retreat, generally people are best friends and laughing and, you know, sharing the excitement of the day and looking forward to how they're going to integrate these things into their lives. And I just love that so dang much.
Hmm. And even the food, because people love something to celebrate in between them. Like it's a great icebreaker to just say, "Oh my God, this is so delicious." Or, "Wow,
Right.
I've never tasted this before. Have you had this before?" And it's like it gives you something to talk about when if the food wasn't there,
Definitely.
you'd just be like, "So, hi."
Exactly. Exactly. That's why I think it's a good icebreaker.
Yeah. And I also resonated with what you said about, the cooks or the kitchen is always like away. There was this one uh place where we did a retreat. It was like 2018, and the kitchen was not even in the house. It was like in the back house,
Oh my
which
goodness.
was weird. And I was cooking. It was one of those things where I was doing it all. And I just felt so separated and so isolated and alienated. And you're right. Food is, and people would come around to the back to like sniff and be like, "What are you doing? What are you getting into?" Because they want to be part of it.
Yes, exactly. And if you think about any home gathering, people congregate in the kitchen. Why not do that at a retreat too?
Hmm. So I saw that you also do this kind of like open space, inviting people to be in the kitchen with you.
100%. I'm a very casual chef, as you can maybe even see how I'm dressed right now. I am not a stiff white coat, kitchen's off limits, don't touch the refrigerator. And I know there's some chefs that are like that, but that is not me at all. In fact, I welcome people to come in if they're hungry and I don't have a snack out for them to come in and ask or even peek around the refrigerator. Maybe they can grab some fresh fruit out of the refrigerator to snack on. But I really enjoy when people just hang out in the kitchen. I
Hmm.
just returned from a retreat in Sedona, and each morning I was up 5 a.m. starting breakfast. And there was a woman that got up every morning at 5:30 and came and sat at the kitchen counter with me, and we just chatted as I was, you know, shaping bagels or whatever I was doing, and we just chatted. And she texted me the day after the retreat closed and said, I miss our morning chats. And you can't do that in a restaurant or in a place where the chef is hidden away and simply the help. And I feel like having an open kitchen and kind of a welcoming environment allows those that are a little bit shy and maybe aren't quite ready to connect to the rest of the group to connect with someone who's kind of in charge. Everyone has some kind of
Hmm.
connection to the host, whether they know them or not, but they signed up. They're like, I know who this person is. Maybe they follow them on Instagram. But as someone else who is kind of a leader at the retreat, I like to consider myself a host assistant. I will move yoga blocks and help, make transportation plans and that sort of thing. But I think people kind of gravitate towards the people that are in charge, so to speak. And it gives them an opportunity to just kind of start to melt into the retreat when I'm available to sit and chat.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Especially if you're shy or you're just introverted, and or maybe even if they have a desire to learn, just watching you
Mm-hmm.
can, like, what are you doing? And what's that? Why do you add that in there? What does that taste
Yes.
like?
Yes, exactly. And I love those questions. I love it when people are hanging out as I'm doing something. I often include edible flowers in my meals. I think it makes it really beautiful and inviting, but also kind of a nice little special touch. How often do you get flowers on your meal? And so if someone's hanging around as I'm plating up the meal, I like to hand them a flower and give them the opportunity to taste it. I'll say, what do you think it tastes like? Because every flower tastes different too. And I think that's really fun to give people the opportunity to try a little bit of what I'm working on, or maybe even say, like, I'm thinking about making brownies or chocolate chip cookies. Which would you prefer? And them having just an opinion and kind of a say in what is happening for the day, I think gives a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of a buy-in into the event.
Hmm. And you said you consider yourself like you said leader. I know what you mean. Just, part of the people who are running the retreat, And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
how do you think your involvement and not being away and being there kind of enhances the experience? Almost like you're a facilitator as far as food goes.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I definitely consider myself a facilitator of the food, and I'm someone there that's present all day long. People get to see me all day. They know me. They're they're able to connect in a way that I think gives them a little bit more of a chance to open up if they want to. And maybe they're not ready to with a bigger group, but they know they need to do something. Maybe they're sharing about how they're nervous about this hike that's coming up, or they're here because of a loss in their family or something like that. And I think sometimes just having someone to talk to that is kind of in that. I'm not a therapist by any means, but I think that gathering in the kitchen is oftentimes a comforting and therapeutic place, that I think that it makes it feel that much more welcoming and that much more, I don't know, just an easy way for people to open up and start
Mhm.
to settle into their retreat.
Yeah. I was thinking about what analogy I could use to describe what you just said. I came to thinking of like a caddy for golfers, but I don't think that's the right thing. Then I was thinking maybe it's kind of like you feel like you're at home with your mom, and that kind of those conversations come out like like maybe you can't share things with the rest of with the rest of the family, but you think like, okay, it's just one person, I can do this. And it's kind of
Yes.
like the prep work for the, yeah, you can go out there, go and do it. And then they're like, yeah, I can do it. And they get back in the group and they're ready to go. Right.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I definitely think that's a great analogy.
Okay. Well, so what kind of food do you make? What's your cuisine like?
Oh, I always have a hard time identifying that until I eat out at a restaurant or I am traveling and I realize, oh, I really do have a style. So I would say in general, my cuisine is local. And I know that's a buzzword and everyone says that, but I truly try to shop at farmers markets and local markets and really bring whatever the area has to really showcase to light on the table. So, by way of example, a retreat in Montana is absolutely going to have some steak because of the rich ranching history. So, I like to ensure that the place and the season is represented. But I also like to make sure that the host's plans are also represented. So, by way of example, the welcome day of each retreat is generally kind of a bit of a grounding day. We're starting to calm our nervous system a little bit. Maybe excuse me, excuse me again. Um, Maybe we're calming our nervous system a little bit so that we can, again, settle into the retreat. And um, oftentimes it's a slower day. People are coming in, they've traveled, they are, you know, maybe a little frazzled. So I often will assign the first day to the root chakra, and I will get prepare foods that are very grounding, foods that align with the chakra, lots of red. Um, the guests don't know it, but I like to think that they feel it. So that's kind of a long way of saying I'm kind of a woo-woo cook. I like to put all of the things into it, and I like for things to be healthy. I don't want you to feel like you are um, weighed down by the foods that you're consuming, especially at a retreat. Maybe you're going straight into some breath work, and you don't want a ball of food sitting in your gut while you're doing some deep breath work. But
Yeah.
similarly, it's not a detox. I'm not a vegan chef, although I'd be happy to do that for a retreat. And I have done it for retreats, but I like to make sure that everyone feels that they're getting what's important to them. So if that means including steaks and maybe even a milkshake after dinner, or, something indulgent. It's going to be a part of it, but there's also going to be some healthy vegetables and, a healthy variety of fruits and vegetables, and kind of lean preparations. I have had a number of retreats in which people have said things like, I've never liked broccoli until I ate this, or I didn't know that kale could be delicious and I just had a second serving, and things like that. So I like to make things fresh, local, representative of the location and the host, and super delicious.
That's important, that last part.
Indeed.
Super delicious. I really like that. My husband and I were talking about, I think this morning, I mean, not about food, but I'll abstract it to say that a lot of times retreats are about disconnecting you from everything that you're used to in your normal life. So it's almost like a bubble that you're going in, which can be good because you're experiencing a whole different perspective. But what I'm understanding from your cooking style, it's a more like meeting people where they are, but making it better so that they can recognize the habits they may already have back home and make tiny changes instead of feeling like, oh my God, I don't eat anything like this, and now I need to go 100% plant-based and I don't know how to do that.
Right. Exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head, that I want people to feel comfortable, but maybe pushing their boundaries a little bit, and especially pushing their boundaries when it comes to preparations of things that they consider healthy and boring.
That's always fun because I think most of the time when we think something doesn't taste good, it's just because we don't know, or where we've eaten it previously didn't know how to, what flavors go with this, what's going to bring out, like, I learned a few years ago that eating tomatoes with avocado brings out the flavor and brings out the nutrients in each other. So now I always try to pair those together, when before I would eat avocado just by itself. And it was like, I'll do it, but I didn't really want it to. The taste was, a little too bland, I guess. And
Yeah.
earthy.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I think that's a really great example of combining things that are familiar, maybe in a new way, that really showcases both of them, or multiple things.
So what have you experienced that has been like a big transformation with your cooking at retreats?
My own transformation or guest transformation?
Can we do both?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's start with guest. That's a little easier. I almost always have comments at the retreats saying things like, normally I can't take my rings off at the end of the night because I'm so inflamed, and this whole week my rings come off very easily. Or typically when I travel, I have challenges with digestion and I haven't had any challenges this week. Or, you know, all kinds of those kinds of comments. But my very best, very favorite kind of story, if you will, is one retreat. A guest arrived a day early, and she was staying in the retreat house with me and the host the first night. So we all went out to dinner, and I drove her back to the house. And she was sharing with me stories about her mother who had just passed away. And I listened. I listened for a good 45 minutes of the drive. And then we sat in the driveway for another maybe 20 minutes and continued to talk in the dark. And I saw again, I'm not a therapist. I have no practice in helping people in any way. I just listened and I asked a couple questions. And by the end of the retreat, she came up to me and shared that because of our conversation, she was able to process her mother's passing so much better. And she felt like she had spent the week really grieving appropriately so that she could move on in a way. And, that almost makes me cry because it's such a touching thing that has nothing to do with food. It has everything to do with being a human that cares. And I care through my food because that's what I know best. But I can also just sit and listen and ask questions. And I'm happy to do that as kind of again, leader of a retreat. Even if I'm not leading it, I am someone that is there for them to talk to.
Yeah. That's
So
wonderful that you could be there for her like that. And listening is so powerful.
It really is. It really is. And I'll just share because I thought it was interesting. I asked her if she was spiritual at all or if she had spent any time talking to her mom since her passing. That was one of my questions that I asked her. And this retreat happened to come over Mother's Day. And she shared that she had a whole conversation with her mom out on the beach on Mother's Day as her first Mother's Day in heaven. And it makes me so happy that someone can have that kind of transformation. And again, it has nothing to do with food, but everything to do with connection. And the food can help with that connection, even if it's just over a table or, we had dinner together and drove home together and had that conversation. It's so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. My
And what
pleasure.
about you?
My biggest transformation is probably a deep sense of happiness and gratitude. When I was a chef in restaurants, I wasn't a very happy person. I loved preparing food for people. I loved what I did, but the long hours and the time away from my family was just too much in a way. I had done it for so long that I was lucky in that I left restaurants just before the pandemic hit and decided I wanted to do private chef work. I did my very first retreat in January of 2020. Then the world shut down and I couldn't do retreats any longer. And I was thinking, this is what I'm meant to do. I spent my whole career working towards this point, and I get to spend long days still. I'm often cooking on my feet for 18 hours a day at a retreat, but it is so gratifying. I love every second of it. I love being able to be in the community. I love getting to know the people at the retreats. I love not knowing what they do for a living because then I can learn who they truly are and not how they earn their money. And I go home exhausted, but so excited. And my husband has even commented that he loves this job for me, that I am the happiest and the most, fulfilled person that I have been since he's known me as a retreat chef.
That's amazing.
It really
You
is.
found your calling,
Indeed.
the
Indeed.
retreat chef. And how did you get started cooking?
Oh, that is hard to even remember. I think I came out of the womb loving food. My parents tell a story of me being about 2 years old and in my bedroom, put to bed, and my parents were eating ice cream, and I hollered out from my little toddler bed, "What's somebody got in somebody's mouth?" And I was so interested in food from such a young age that it just kind of felt natural. I started cooking at a very young age. I have a very early memory of eating mussels freshly caught on my grandfather's boat, dipping
Wow.
it in garlic butter. I
Mhm.
was probably 5. And
But it wasn't raw, right? It was cooked.
no, we cooked them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Mm.
I I just have always had a love of food. So as a child, I was often playing restaurant and cooking things for my family and whatever it would be. As a high schooler, I was baking all the time. I was on the track team and I took Nike shoe boxes to the track every single day with cookies or cupcakes. And, it was
Wow.
it was good to be a teammate of mine. uh,
Yeah.
and I was lucky enough as a high schooler to have a family friend that was a food scientist. So I
Oh,
followed the food science route first. So I have a degree in food science and I have worked in product development most of my life as well. And I also went to culinary school. So I know how to put things together so they taste good, but I also know the science of why we do it. Like you were saying about the avocado and the tomato, I know that the fat needs acid and that the tomato needs a little bit of bulk to it to really taste extra delicious. And I think I've combined all of those things working in restaurants and product development pretty much my whole life. My young adulthood, I was often working 2 jobs because I just loved it so much. And I just couldn't imagine another life for me. I love food and I love creating it for people and I love sharing it with people so that I can share my love in that way. And I also love teaching others to cook. I think that cooking at home is a really underrated skill. And again, back to gathering in my kitchen at a retreat and asking questions, I've fully embraced that because I believe that everyone should be able to cook at home if they want to. And it, I think it's a great way to bring joy into the home, but it's also a great way to bring those family dinners and conversations in. And also just a great way to knit.
hmm Yeah, I resonate with that. We cook at home a lot, and because we also work a lot, which we love what we do, just like you. I love what I do.
Mhm.
But we only really see each other when we eat,
Yes.
and because we cook at home, it's like, okay, it's time to eat. So we go to the kitchen, and maybe we put the music on, and we're just being together while
Yes.
we're creating and feeding ourselves.
100%. And you just set such a beautiful scene of being together in the kitchen with some music. And, I picture a little bit of kitchen dancing, maybe a glass of
Yes.
wine, and,
Yeah.
like it, it's just such a nice way to be together, isn't it?
It is nice. And then when the food is good and you're eating, and then you just, Wow, that was so good. I don't know. There is something about cooking at home that's very different. And like you said, a lot of times when we eat out, there's this heaviness that you
Mm-hmm.
feel in your body. And I guess that has a lot to do with the fact that, and I've talked about this before, restaurants cook for taste, not for well-being. Like they're not looking for you to feel
Yeah.
good. They're looking for you to say, "Ooh, this was delicious,"
Uh-huh. Definitely.
and come
And
back
I
for
would
more.
say the major difference between a professional chef and a home cook is the use of salt and butter, probably. And I think that as a home cook or someone just exploring cooking at home, whether it's something that you love to do or you're learning to do, just adding some additional salt to it, give it a taste, add some more salt, give it another taste, and then add some more salt. I It's interesting when I'm teaching people, they'll, do a little shake or a couple sprinkles. I'm like, no, let's quadruple that. And it tastes great. And it doesn't add that much. And unless you have hypertension, salt is great for us.
We are salt.
Exactly.
We are made of salt.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, with the butter and the sugar. We have a
Yes.
Thermomix. Have you heard of the Thermomix?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Listen, it's amazing. And it has a screen where you can go into a cookbook and find recipes to make things. And basically, it guides you, so you don't have to know what you're doing. It just says, "Do this, do that, do this."
Yes.
But a lot of times, you don't realize you're like, "Oh, I want whatever that thing is." Um, because I make a lot of banana bread. Let's say a banana bread, and then you get the recipe, and it's like, put 3 cups of sugar, and you're like, "Whoa, that's a lot." I'm like we don't even realize how much in the things that we buy because we're not making it
Yes.
ourselves. We can't control the amounts that we're
Exactly.
ingesting, or like a whole stick of butter for something. And you know, maybe that's what you want. But if it's not, when you're cooking at home, you have the choice of what you want, how much of everything you want to put.
Definitely. Definitely. Love that you mentioned sugar too, because that was a big realization to me. Every time I travel, really, I don't eat out a ton. And when I do, I have kind of my favorites that are, my favorite burrito shop or my favorite place to get a wood fired pizza, things like that. I also live in a small town that doesn't have a lot of opportunity to eat out. But I was traveling for the most recent retreat and I took myself out to dinner the night before and I got a burger and a salad. You'd think super simple. It was a small town. I thought, oh, can't go wrong there. And it was delicious, but it was so sweet. The salad was so sweet, I almost couldn't eat it. Even the burger was
Wow.
sweet. They put a jam on it, an onion jam.
Oh,
And
okay.
it just really struck me how much sugar is in the foods that we're getting in restaurants. And you're right, we've been kind of programmed to have this certain highly palatable food choices, and that's how chefs are typically preparing things. And I guess I'm not that way. I don't sweeten it quite that much.
That's great. That's great because you're giving people's bodies a break from all that sugar. Is so delicious, but it's a double-edged sword.
Exactly.
So, what advice would you give to retreat leaders who are looking to maybe work with someone at the retreat? How do you find the right chef?
That is a really great question. And I think, first of all, if you're trying to do it on your own, it's probably not going to be a great experience, as you probably experienced when you were cooking and trying to do it all on your own.
Yeah.
You're hosting people for a reason because you have a zone of genius to share. You don't need to be cooking. You don't need to be doing the little things. Definitely look into hiring someone. And sometimes it's more affordable than you think. But my biggest advice when hiring a chef is look for someone who is aligned to your values and what you're looking to present in your retreat. I always sit down with my retreat hosts and have at least one Zoom conversation, if not two, maybe three, before we put on the retreat, but definitely at least one before we even sign a contract. I want to make sure that they know who I am and I know who they are and make sure it feels aligned. I would hate for someone to hire me and think they're getting, someone who's more formal and, someone that maybe wears a chef's coat every day and serves the food with one hand behind their back. And, it's I've done that in my life, but it's not my style. And I want to make sure that the host knows that. And I have had some very, very successful retreats because the host and I have aligned so well that we almost can communicate without speaking. I can see that, maybe over in the side of the house where they're putting on a workshop, I can see that that's getting a bit emotional and maybe we need some snacks afterwards because the, you know, sometimes it's good to fuel emotion and, uh, moving around times tables and things that are maybe changing a little bit. I think it's really important to have someone who can work with you on those kinds of things. Not to say that being scheduled and having something a little bit more rigid isn't it's not a bad thing, but I find that retreats are never perfectly aligned, never rigid, and having someone that's flexible and that can move with that and move with you is really important.
Yeah, I like that. It's like the intuitive chef. Because you can, like you said,
Yeah.
you're observing and you're like, maybe this is a good time for tea. Maybe everyone would enjoy some tea. Or the
Yeah.
food, I find like if you think a lot of plant medicine ceremonies, they tell you don't eat because the effects, right? But if you want to ground yourself, if you want to bring it down, eat. So I
Yes.
love how you said, there's lots of emotions going on. I'm like, okay, maybe we need a snack, maybe we need to help everybody bring it down and ground
Exactly.
the energy.
Exactly.
That's really cool because when you think I'm gonna hire a chef, or at least me, I can't speak for everybody. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, you're gonna do breakfast, maybe lunch and dinner, maybe a dinner, and maybe some snacks in between. But
Mm-hmm.
I had not thought of somebody that's in sync with me, kind of like like music, just listening for my cue to be like, okay, we need
Mm-hmm.
something there. Okay, something can go there.
Yeah.
That's very uh different. It's very unique. I like it.
I like to think that that's one of my superpowers, that because food is the way that I share love and show people that I care, I like to think that I am pretty aware of how people are feeling and how hungry they might be. For example, the last retreat I was working, the ladies went out on a guided hike and they came back late, and I could just tell by the fact that they were late and they hadn't arrived yet that they were going to need something the second they walked in. And I was right. They blew in and were like, we need food. And they were angry because the guide got them lost. And so I put some booze in their smoothies because this wasn't a dry retreat. And they were so excited. They were like, it's like, women or something. Like, need calories, want booze, like maybe go take a nap. We're good.
Nice. That's awesome. So you also do retreats with with booze. Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
women's retreats, girls retreats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Most of the retreats I do are primarily women, although I have had some that are kind of co-ed. They're definitely all wellness related because I like wellness and I like working what I do into my work. So
Mm.
it just aligns better for me. I'm not much of
Mm-hmm.
a corporate retreat chef. I don't care as much for those. I like those where people are going to help expand themselves in one way or another.
Yeah,
And yes, sometimes they
that's
have
awesome.
boost.
That's different too, but also flexible, like not
Yeah,
being rigid to this is the way things have to be. Once again, I think it's just a testament to your meeting people where they are so that they feel comfortable so they can do the more important work. And maybe if that's
exactly.
something that they want to enjoy, we don't have to be here and pretend like like we don't enjoy that for the weekend.
Yes,
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So how does it work when someone works with you? Do you work on the menu together? Do you go out and find a local marketplace where you do all the shopping beforehand? Like what does it entail to work with you?
Yeah, working with me starts early. We generally have several conversations about what the schedule is, what your vibe for the retreat is, what you're kind of hoping to get out of it, and any other things like, is this a dry retreat? Is it a gluten-free retreat? Is it a anything goes retreat? And uh, I will
Anything
often
goes
put
retreat.
together, yeah, in
Well,
terms
maybe
of
you can tell me more
food
about.
anyway.
Okay, right.
So anything goes, meaning, meat is available, gluten is available. It's kind of a I eat everything kind of retreat.
Okay.
So I guess I should clarify because there can be some anything goes retreats.
Maybe, yeah. There's a retreat for everything these days. I'm learning.
Indeed. Indeed. So we'll have a conversation about what that looks like. I will generally put together a proposed menu based on some of the research I've done on the location and perhaps on a little bit about you and the retreat. Um, for example, say this is a sustainability based retreat. I would ensure that every meal, the any leftovers or any ingredient, it can be multi-purposed so that there's no waste. And I would ensure that I have compost bins available I'm not bringing any plastic, for example. I just try to make sure that it feels really aligned with what the host is looking for. And I also, yes, put together a shopping map. Oftentimes it's to a location I've never been. I am a traveling retreat chef. So I travel all around the country and hopefully someday out of the country. And I do the research on where the places to shop are. I always start with when and where are the farmers markets. I look for local butchers, local farm stands, things like that to kind of start. And then I kind of grow from there. I'll almost always make trips to Whole Foods and in places like that. But I definitely like to start with what is grown and farmed locally. And I send out a pretty detailed dietary questionnaire. I like to make sure that everyone is getting what they want, even if it's that they don't like cilantro. I want to make sure that that's noted. And I like to also ask what their three favorite or their three deserted island foods would be, because I think that gives us some really good insight as to how people are. I have had deserted island answers that are like blueberries, almonds, dark chocolate, and I've had other deserted island foods being pizza, ice cream, tacos, so it gives you an idea of how people are fueling themselves, but it also
Yeah.
gives me an idea like, gosh, this group of ladies really likes chocolate chip cookies. I'm going to make sure to have some chocolate chip cookies. So it's a really nice way to allow every attendee to feel fully seen and taken care of, and that they don't have to worry about what they're eating.
That sounds
And
amazing.
then I travel to the retreat. I often arrive a day or two early, depending on the remoteness of the retreat, and I will shop. I travel with my giant Yeti on wheels, and I often will book a place that has a full-size refrigerator, and I'll shop and take things back to the retreat house. And then typically I just live at the retreat house also and prepare food and start breakfast. As soon as breakfast gets out, I start lunch. Oftentimes I'll be starting dinner not long after breakfast if it's a bigger thing. So I spend my day
Wow.
in the kitchen.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing you love what you do
It
because you're
is.
doing a lot
It
of it.
is. Of course. But I do love it.
And what's your deserted island? Like, what's your favorite thing, not just to eat, but to make?
I love pizza. I could eat pizza probably 5 days a week. There's something so
Wow.
perfect about it with a nice chewy crust, like a sourdough crust that's been cooked wood
Good.
fire. Um, the tangy tomato, nice salty creamy cheese, a little brightness from some basil. I could live off of. But because pizza is not completely balanced, only although it feels like it, I think my other deserted island foods are probably, some sort of fruit. Almost every day, I need to have a handful of fruit, probably with my granola. So maybe those are two things in one. And I am a big fan of tea. I don't think I could live without tea. So that would definitely
Mm.
be a deserted island food. And my favorite thing to make, I really enjoy making tacos, especially when I have guests that I don't necessarily know I'm going to have. I love when people just stop by the house, my house, or, I'm visiting family and, oh, you're here. Why don't you make us dinner? So I love to make tacos because it generally pleases everyone and it's generally pretty easy to make, but it also is a great way to get creative. I've heard a quote somewhere that anything can be a taco with a tortilla and a dream. And I believe that.
That's so true. I mean, I'm living in Mexico, and I can tell you that is 100% true. All you need is a tortilla, and you're good to go.
Yes.
Mm. But do you make crunchy tacos or soft tacos or both?
Soft tacos most often. I do love crunchy tacos, but I try not to fry things too often in my own home. That's not to say that I don't do it, but I'm definitely a huge fan of all tacos. And I love tortilla chips. That was maybe a deserted island thing too.
Mm.
I think crispy tacos are a little bit like having a super epic tortilla chip with all the things in it.
Mm-hmm.
That is maybe too much of a weakness, and I couldn't eat. I would just not stop.
Yeah, that's pretty good too. Especially the dipping. You just like dip forever and all the goodies. Mm.
Yes.
I have not eaten yet, if you couldn't tell.
I
And
know
now
I'm
I'm
getting
hungry and
hungry
I'm like
too.
craving chocolate chip cookies. Some chocolate chip cookies. Okay, well, is there anything else that you'd like to share or a message you'd like to put out as far as food at retreats?
Oh my gosh. I think if I could just have one sentence to say, it's that I think retreats are really powerful and they work up really powerful emotions and growth and just all kinds of feelings. And that requires powerful food. And I mean, you're creating a powerful appetite too. And I think that having food that brings people together at one table, especially, there's no better way to have a retreat.
I agree. I agree so much. Thank you, Tiffany, for being here, for sharing all your delicious thoughts.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun to talk food and retreats, my two favorite things.